All right, hey, what's up, y'all? So today I want to talk about stress, all right, what it is, how it impacts the body, and what we can do to mitigate it and minimize it, and also work with it once we notice that it showed up. All right, we feel like this is really solid information. We've actually done a couple of corporate account seminars, and then we did a Zoom meeting and Facebook Live on it. We've received some feedback and kind of integrated that into what we're talking about here. So we feel like this is really solid, useful information. All right, so what we want to do is talk about the physiological impact of stress on the body. And if we can understand the physiological impact, then that should give us a little bit of a priority of acknowledging stress in our lives because it's having such an impact on our health. Then we want to understand what the different symptoms are that we might be experiencing from stress, so that when we notice those symptoms, we can acknowledge that we're being stressed or that stress is contributing to those symptoms. And then once we notice that, we have a chance to work with it. And that's where we bring in our little simple strategies for dealing with it, minimizing it, mitigating it, and working with it once we've noticed that it's shown up. But I think the most important piece of this is understanding how it impacts our health, how it shows up symptomatically, so that we can acknowledge it and then work with it and minimize it and mitigate it. All right, so let's talk about how stress impacts us physiologically. So I want to talk a little bit about the body's autonomic nervous system modes. Most of us have probably heard the term fight or flight and rest or digest. So the body has these two different autonomic nervous system modes it would be in. And typically it's going to be dominantly in one of these modes or the other. It's never smack dab in the middle. So it's going to be either heavily weighted in the rest and digest or heavily weighted in the fight or flight. All right, so when your body is in a fight or flight or stressed out state, this is when the priority is dealing with an emergency or dealing with a perceived threat, right? So in this situation, all the energy and resources go to energy production and dealing with this perceived emergency or this real threat, right? So that means that energy and blood flow are diverted away from the digestive system. Energy and blood flow are diverted towards the skeletal muscles and our lungs for acute breathing and muscle action. And the heart rate starts to increase, our blood flow starts to increase, our pupils dilate so that we can see better and let more light in. And all of our intestinal sphincters, our digestive sphincters, shut down, digestive juices stop flowing, and we start to inhibit peristalsis, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people that seem stressed on a regular basis seem to have some constipation. All right, so in this sympathetic nervous system mode or in fight or flight or a stressed out state, the priority is dealing with this emergency or this perceived emergency. So all the resources go from internal to external so that we can deal with this emergency, right? Now contrast that with a parasympathetic mode. This is also known as rest and digest or a calm and relaxed state. This should be our default. This should be where we are most of the time because this is synonymous with relaxation, healing, recovery, and recuperation, and strong digestion. All right, so in this parasympathetic or rest and digest state or calm and relaxed state, all the blood vessels to the digestive system start to open up, the digestive sphincters start to relax, digestive juices start to flow, we start to incorporate some healing and recovery and recuperation, and then peristalsis starts to increase, and so our digestive system starts to move things along. All right, so parasympathetic or rest and digest or calm and relaxed state is synonymous with the body going internally and starting to heal itself. All right, now we can be in either one of these two modes very strongly, or we can be subtly in either one of these two modes. So let's talk about what is stress. All right, so stress is going to be the real or perceived threat that is initiating the body moving towards a state of fight or flight. Right? It doesn't mean that we're at the extreme end of that. It just means that we are moving in the direction of being more stressed. Right? So that means we're moving in this direction of these physiological activities happening that is synonymous with being stressed out. So what happens when you get stressed out is you secrete adrenaline, cortisol, other stress type hormones like glucocorticoids, you increase your blood pressure, When you secrete cortisol and adrenaline and these other glucocorticoids, you're mobilizing energy. So you're actually getting glucose into the bloodstream so it can be used by muscles and tissues. That also means that you're secreting insulin, all right, because insulin helps direct the usage of that energy. And then digestion is stopped, growth is stopped, reproduction is stopped. All these things that are considered not necessary in that moment and that are more internal start to get shut down because the priority is dealing with this external perceived threat, right? So how does mental stress and anxiety play into this? Well, mental stress and anxiety are still stress. So the body doesn't know the difference between an actual threat or a imagined or perceived threat. So, but there's extremes, there's this whole spectrum. So if I'm in here and I'm really tired and I'm about to fall asleep and I have some guy come in here and hold me up with a gun, out of nowhere, I'm going to find the energy to either freaking beat the heck out of the guy or run and jump out the window and run a mile and climb a wall. And I would just find energy out of nowhere because my body is mobilizing energy through this emergency response system. All right, so it doesn't matter how tired I am. If I hadn't slept for days, something like that happened, I would find the energy because I am activating that sympathetic nervous system. If I'm thinking about something that is mentally stressing me out and causing me some kind of anxiety, it may not be as extreme as something like that, but I am moving in the direction of being stressed out, which means that I'm still having all these physiological activities happening, but at a lower level. And so what happens is, if I'm constantly stressed out and I'm not aware of it, and I'm constantly being anxious and constantly being caught up and triggered and thinking about things that aren't serving me, I am on the spectrum moving towards that stressed out state, but a little bit more subtly. And what happens is I stay there consistently over time, and that starts to accumulate some damage. So then let's talk about what those specific symptoms are, how that might manifest, and how I might notice those things in my body. All right, so sometimes stress is affecting us in ways that we're not really aware of because we may chalk it up to something else. And if we can acknowledge what these symptoms are, then we can pay attention to these signals and then work with them, all right? So fatigue, headaches, tension, and then physical exhaustion because the body is just being physically active all the time in the stressed out state. Stress is going to reduce your ability to concentrate and focus. And I think all of us have noticed in times of being stressed out or relatively stressed out, it's very difficult to focus on what's in front of us because the tendency is to gravitate towards the things that are preoccupying our mind. And stress, because it is a temporary induced state of increased heart capacity, then I am increasing my risk for heart issues down the road, especially if I have constant subtle stress that's happening nonstop over time, because stress is an induced heart situation. And so if I'm having that happen all the time, I'm increasing my risk for some kind of a heart issue down the road. And then a lot of us are concerned about body composition. Well, stress is going to contribute to fat gain because, or at least it's not going to allow you to burn fat because remember, we talked about stress inducing energy through secreting cortisol and adrenaline and some of these other stress hormones. Well, the way the body mobilizes energy is it gets glucose out of the liver glycogen, sometimes muscle glycogen, and that happens relatively fast. And then in that process, we're secreting insulin. And then in the presence of insulin, it's almost impossible for me to pull energy from my excess body fat stores. Right, so over time, being constantly stressed out or worked up is going to contribute to either fat gain or inhibit the ability to tap into fat stores for energy. All right, so then we've all also noticed when we're stressed out, it affects our mood. And most people are going to be a little bit more irritable, a little bit more grumpy, maybe get set off a little bit easier, maybe get triggered a little bit easier. Along the lines of the whole fat gain, cravings are completely different. Your appetite completely changes. Most of us have probably noticed when we're stressed out, we want to eat more. We want to eat more of the wrong things. We want to snack constantly. It's almost like we're trying to feed this energy cycle by eating carbohydrates and feeling like we need more caffeine. And then it contributes to sleep problems for a lot of people, and I think most of us can acknowledge when we're in a stressed out situation or a stressed out time period, it's a little bit more challenging to sleep because your tendency, even at an unconscious level, is to be brooding over these things that are preoccupying your mind. And then finally, something that's very important to all of us right now, our immune system gets suppressed, right? So again, if in a stressed out state, my body's priority is dealing with an emergency or a perceived emergency, then its priority is not being internal and healing and recovering and recuperating and building the immune system. So I become numb to pain signals. I become numb to symptoms. The priority is not dealing with an infection, not dealing with outside external invaders. Acute inflammation and acute stress is actually beneficial as long as we can back off of that and give the body a chance to heal. But chronic stress, chronic anxiety is going to contribute to chronic inflammation and chronic suppressed immune system. All right, now understanding those different physiological symptoms is great because now we can start to pay attention to those things and work with it. And as soon as we notice those things, we can come back to the present moment. And in that noticing, we've temporarily stopped that cascade or stopped that problem from happening. All right, so now let's talk about how to minimize stress from happening. I want to make a big plug here for being a real foodie and stressing the importance of just focusing on our different foundations for health, because when you find health, you find yourself and you show up to life completely different. There's a certain amount of life, it is as it is, right? There's events that happen, and the stress or the anxiety comes from the thinking around those different events. So if we can get to this level of acceptance of what is, and then notice ourselves getting caught up or worked up or anxious, then we have a chance to come back to the present moment and work with it. And one of the best ways that we can do that is through finding personal health. All of us that have been on this health journey to any degree have probably noticed that once we started this health journey and became healthier, we started to show up to life completely different. We were automatically cooler and calmer and more collected. We were automatically less stressed and less anxious. We were automatically more happy. And that comes from just being healthy without even focusing on trying to be less anxious or less stressed, right? So showing up and being the healthiest version of yourself is going to be the best thing that we can do to prevent or mitigate or minimize stress from happening. And so I just want to make a plug for our 4 main foundations. Number 1, we want to make sure that we're eating real food. And if you're not tuned in to what we teach through the SHT, which we think that that's what would be ideal, even if you just gravitated towards your own definition of real food, that's going to be a heck of a lot better than processed food. And what we're looking for is nutrient density and training the body to be metabolically flexible and fat burning. And when we do that, we're going to have consistent energy levels, consistent moods. We're going to show up better. We're going to show up happier, cooler, calmer, less anxious, and less tense. All right. We also want to make sure that we're prioritizing sleep. So we'd recommend allotting at least 7 hours of bedtime for sleep, understanding that within that 7 hours, we may wake up once or twice in the middle of the night. 7 hours, I think, is the minimum that we want to allot for bedtime. Ideally, we'd have 8 or 9 hours of bedtime, but 7 hours is a good starting place. And to have better quality sleep, we want to make sure that we're getting outside every day and getting about 30 minutes of brightness. And that brightness is impacting our retinas. That is sending us a signal of what time of day is and telling the body when to secrete certain hormones. It's telling the body when to start secreting melatonin. So if we get out and get some brightness every day, we're giving the body a signal of energy during the day. And then in the evening, when the sun goes down or when we get within a couple of hours of our bedtime, we want to make sure that we're minimizing our stimulus, because that stimulus is going to confuse the body and keep the body from going to sleep and keep the body from cycling through its deeper phases of rest and recuperation. So again, allotting 7 hours of bedtime, getting outside every single day and getting some brightness. Even better would be getting some sun exposure on your skin, but just definitely getting that brightness to give your body a signal of what time of day it is. And then when you get close to bedtime, making sure that you're minimizing your stimulus, you're off your phones, you're off the television, you're not doing anything that's super mind stimulating. You're trying to relax and calm down and try to get ready for some good quality sleep. All right. We want to make sure that we're moving most days. I recommend doing a walk in the morning. I love solitary walks, so you can get out there and have some own mind time and kind of prioritize your day and think about the things that you want. But even if you just do a brisk walk, listen to some podcasts or something, I think that would be useful. Having a dedicated workout program is awesome. I also like to have a walk in the evenings after the end of my day to kind of recap the day and think about all the different positive things that I've experienced and kind of end the day with a little calm and relaxed note. And then making sure that you find time to practice presence every day. All right, so this would be either a formal meditation practice where you're sitting with the focus, You're noticing your mind drift. You're noticing your tendency to think about something or get lost in thought or get caught up or talk to yourself. And as soon as you notice that, you come back to your focus. If you can find some time to do a dedicated meditation session where you're practicing that skill, then throughout the rest of the day, as you go throughout the rest of your day, you're going to notice yourself automatically noticing yourself getting caught up, noticing yourself getting distracted, noticing yourself getting triggered, and in that noticing you have a chance to work with it. So practicing presence means having a formal meditation practice. You can learn from someone like us. You can use some of those meditation apps out there like 10% Happier, Headspace, Calm, Sam Harris's Waking Up app, or you can practice presence in your own way, which may be a devotion or some personal quiet time in the morning. And it can even mean getting outside and just taking a moment to let the sun hit your skin and be there with that experience, or let the breeze hit your skin, or being outside and just listening to the sounds in nature, or taking a moment when you're sitting in your chair at the office and feeling the pressure of the chair up against your seat and your feet on the floor, just taking some time throughout the day to just be completely present. All right, that is going to cultivate the skill to notice yourself getting caught up and to notice yourself getting lost in thought or anxious or tense or stressed out. All right. Now, once we notice stress has shown up, then we have a chance to work with it. All right. So the noticing in and of itself is going to be beneficial, because what you'll notice is in the noticing temporarily, you're not stressed out anymore. Right. You may still be feeling the physiological symptoms from it, but once you notice yourself caught up, temporarily you're not. And then you have a chance to work with it. So I feel like the noticing is one of the most important aspects of this whole thing, right? And this is why it's so important to understand what the physiological symptoms are, because sometimes you may notice the symptoms before you notice the mind activity. But either way, as soon as you notice that, you have a chance to work with it. All right. The reality is that we have these mini stress episodes hitting us all throughout the day. Right? And just little, minute situations. You got a meeting coming up and you got a little tension working up because you have this meeting coming up, or you can't find your keys, or you forgot to get something at the grocery store. I mean, it shows itself in a million different ways, but all these little episodes are adding to this cumulative stress. And so what we want are mini episodes of positivity and calm and relaxation and presence. So again, taking a moment to walk in the morning, having a fitness routine in place, because usually when we're working out, we're completely present with that experience and it makes us feel good. And then practicing presence throughout the day is going to be really beneficial to undo some of that cumulative stress that's building up. All right. Now also, these are some things that we've found to be really beneficial when you notice it, right? So when you notice stress show up, whether it's in the mind or in the body, notice it and then come back to the present moment, right? In the noticing, you've stopped that cascade. And then in the noticing, you have a chance to come back and be present. You can listen, you can feel your body, you can focus on your breath, you can focus on just being present in general, all right? So that takes you out of the mind activity. And then when you're back in that present moment, you have a chance to reframe the situation. You can ask yourself really important, beneficial questions like, what is it that I really want? What do I want instead of this? All right? And then what can I do in this moment? What do I need to be focused on? Those are really beneficial, open-ended questions that force the non-conscious mind to look for a positive answer. All right. You can also reframe the event by asking, what is it that's beneficial that can come out of this? What kind of evolution can I experience from this situation? How can I innovate to make things better? How can I take advantage of this to become better or different or evolved? All right. We can also do a couple of exercises I like to use with private clients. One of them is expanding your time horizon, meaning that when I'm in a situation and I notice myself stressed, I come back to the present moment, but I just can't pull myself out of it. I can sit and ask myself, like, what does this look like 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 3 years from now? Once you start to expand your time horizon, all of a sudden, things start to feel okay because you know you're going to get through it. 6 months from now, I know that I'm going to be in a better place and I will have gotten through this difficulty, whatever it is. And that starts to give you a little bit of comfort because you see things in a bigger picture. I think another really beneficial thing to do is to zoom out and see the situation from a distance. Try to see yourself as an actor in a play or in a movie, right? And you see yourself in this situation, you can ask yourself, what advice would I give to myself in this situation? What advice would I give to this actor or actress in this situation? How should they be behaving? How should they be showing up? How do I want this person to be perceived by other people? And if having you in the role is too confusing, then you can maybe switch that out with someone else and say, all right, what advice would I give to someone else in this situation? what advice would I give to a friend going through the exact same situation? All right. And then just, again, taking time throughout the day to practice presence through being completely present outside, listening, feeling, breathing, sun on your skin, taking moments in the office, taking little walk breaks, just trying to get yourself out of that constant stress, repetitive stress routine, because those things build up over time. Okay. So I think to summarize everything, I think it's really beneficial to understand that stress is having an impact on us physiologically. We can either be in a stressed out state or a calm and relaxed state. We're either going to be dominantly in either one of those different modes, depending on what's going on. Ideally, we're going to be in this calm and relaxed state the majority of the time. And just understanding, mental stress, anxiety, perceived threats are going to be just as damaging, potentially damaging as actual threats or emergencies. Maybe even more so because they happen at a much lower level and they're subtle but cumulative over time. And then paying attention to the different symptoms associated with stress, the physiological symptoms that we might notice. Because when we notice those symptoms, we have a chance to work with it. We have a chance to acknowledge that we're under some kind of stress and do something about it. All right? And then to minimize or mitigate stress from happening, just being the healthiest version of yourself possible, making health a priority. When you find health, you find yourself, focusing on our main 4 foundations, which is eating real food, prioritizing sleep, moving most days, and then having some kind of a meditation or mindfulness practice, or just practicing presence in general. And then once it does show up, trying to notice it as it happens, or notice the physiological symptoms. In the noticing, you've stopped that from happening temporarily, and then you have a chance to work with it. You can come back to the present moment. You can listen, feel, or breathe, and then start to reframe it and ask yourself, what is it that I really want? What is it that I can do in this moment? How can I move forward? How can I evolve? How can I innovate? And then you can also use a couple of techniques like expanding your time horizon, looking out 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years down the road, and then also distancing yourself from the situation and looking at it from a distance and just asking yourself, what advice would I give to someone going through this exact situation? How would I want them to show up and handle this situation? All right. So I hope that's useful. Let us know if you have any questions on it. Give us any feedback so we can make this better, and we will talk to you guys soon.